I guess he's leaving me, right? You know, he's got some famous blood. Galifianakis. Y'all know Zach Galifianakis? Yeah. There you go. Come on, Mike. Anyway, it's great to be here. We have an exciting day today for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about ICT accessibility, lay the framework for Access GA, and show you a couple little videos I've peppered throughout the presentation to actually bring in individuals with disabilities. We're going to talk a little bit about assistive technology afterwards, get into a little bit about web accessibility after that, and then content accessibility. Sounds like a lot of stuff, huh? A lot? Are y'all excited about it? All right, good. Well, let me go ahead and tell you a little bit what I'm going to talk about this morning to get us started. I'm going to briefly talk about ICT accessibility. This is going to be a thread throughout the presentations today. Give you a definition of it, give you some examples of it. In addition to that, we're going to talk a little bit about Access GA, as Michael already mentioned, and the project. So when you leave today, you'll have a good idea of who we are and what we do and what we can do for y'all. All right, so we're going to talk a little about that. We're going to talk, you're going to see a video that's tied to that. You're all going to find out why we need Access GA. And I think that's something that's going to be important. Why is a centralized organization needed in Georgia to help with ICT accessibility? So we'll touch on that. We're also going to give you some examples of ICT projects, and I'm going to use the University System of Georgia. Obviously, we are located at Georgia Tech, part of the university system. So a lot of the examples I'm going to give regarding ICT accessibility, going back to why we need it, as well as sample projects, will be based on the university system. Not so much Georgia, but universities across the country, because they've really been the ones that have been in the spotlight a lot of times when it comes to OCR complaints. Then I'm going to hear about challenges. We're going to see a demonstration video on web accessibility. And we're going to jump down and talk a little bit about the findings of a 2013 discovery pilot that we did with the ADA office, where we went around to 7 state agencies. We're going to talk about the findings of that, and then jump into the resources and what we can actually provide for you. So that sounds good. I will get going. I will tell you that this project means a lot to me. I am the department head at Georgia Tech for AMAC. And from a personal standpoint, it's something that I have been very passionate about, making sure that content, making sure that ICT accessibility, that everything is accessible for individuals with disabilities. When I was in college, all my textbooks were actually put on tape for me. I had volunteers that sat around and they taped my books because of my disability, which is dyslexia, which I was diagnosed in the 2nd grade. So, thank you. So it's something that I'm very passionate about, and we've been working with our team now for the last 7 years on making sure that the state of Georgia is more accessible. So what exactly is ICT accessibility? There are several definitions out there. A lot of them are actually confusing. This is the one that actually fits me the best, I think. It fits what we're doing the best. As you can see, it is an umbrella term, and it focuses specifically on communication devices and applications. So communication devices being cell phones, obviously, mobile tablets, applications, learning management system, other web-type platforms. So that's what we're focusing. But underneath that, you see a slew of subcategories that it deals with. Now, Access GA is not dealing with all of these things, but we're starting to drill down and deal with some of these. Now, you'll notice that the tagline, I need glasses, I think now. Tagline is Georgia Accessible ICT Initiative, and that's what Access GA is all about. The one thing that you need to remember about this definition, what's so important, is it's really about making sure that individuals with disabilities have access to electronic environments, period. Completely access. And that's the key thing about Access GA, and that's what we're trying to do. Now, the touching points, I guess I can do this now, are the things that come in most contact with are things like websites, software, videos, social media, and telecommunications. Those are the things that really are out there, that are in the media. Individuals with disabilities are having really trouble accessing, and it's one of those things that we find are probably the most difficult things to actually help these individuals out. Now, I'm going to drill down and talk to you, show you a quick video, and this is around social media. And this is an individual that's actually using LinkedIn right now, and he's an individual who's blind that's struggling accessing LinkedIn. And then we'll come back.
This video was produced by AMAC Accessibility Solutions and Research Center located within the College of Architecture at the Georgia Institute of Technology. Please be advised that the contents of this video do not necessarily represent the policies, opinions, or endorsements of the College of Architecture, the Georgia Institute of Technology, or the Georgia Board of Regents. Using a screen reader with LinkedIn and Facebook.
My name is Vincent Martin. I'm a PhD student, and my area discipline is human-centered computing.
World's largest professional network vertical bar linked in Windows Internet Explorer.
I am bringing up Internet Explorer here, and I have LinkedIn, and I'm using the JAWS for Windows screen reading program and the RealSpeak Solo speech synthesizer.
Title is World's largest professional network vertical bar linked in Windows Internet Explorer.
It told me that I'm using the world's largest professional network, LinkedIn, and also told me that I'm using Windows Internet Explorer. If I read the title bar or the title line for me,
email address edit.
It said email address edit. I know I'm sitting on an edit field here, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this.
Virtual PC
I'm going to use my virtual PC cursor here, which is a review cursor, and I'm going to go up to see what they're asking me to do.
Email it. List of 2 items, blank. Heading level 1 graphic LinkedIn.
I went back to the top to find out what it's asking me.
Blank.
And I still haven't found out what it asked me to do.
World's largest professional network vertical bar LinkedIn.
I'm at the top of the page. I'm going back down.
Blank.
Blank line.
Heading level 1 graphic LinkedIn.
I know I'm at a heading level, and the heading level is LinkedIn, but blank line.
List of 2 items.
It says there's a list of 2 items. Let's see what the 2 items are.
Email address.
Email address.
Edit.
And edit.
Password.
And password.
Link forgot your password.
It doesn't even tell me what to do here. Wonderful. If I did not know what this site was about and what I was intending on doing, I would have no idea. I wouldn't know that if I
password edit, password
keep going,
edit.
And it's even repeating the password.
Sign in button unavailable.
Wow, it said I can't sign in because I don't have anything in here.
List end.
But how do I use this site? I'm going to go down and read and see what it's saying. I'm going to use the command to read more.
Blank. Heading level 2, join the world's largest professional network.
Oh, it says join the world's largest professional network after it gives you the ability to sign in and register. I'm now into LinkedIn and I can use it. If I hadn't known I could do that, I would still be, as we say, just browsing around trying to figure out what's going on.
Same page link, skip to main content.
This says, this is a good thing that has been done. It says same page.
Same page link, skip to main.
Link, skip to content.
Skip.
It moved me down the page to a point where in theory I'm supposed to be able to use it.
Main content starts below.
It said main content starts below, and I'm not even sure if that shows up for a sighted person.
Main content.
If it's done correctly, it won't show up.
Main content starts below.
And it does show up.
Content.
Yes.
Banner end.
And that's the end of the banner. So that banner should have been a hidden banner. So a sighted person would be able to know that it changed, but a blind person wouldn't. So they actually left the text inside the banner and shouldn't have done so.
Main region.
And now I'm in the main region, and this is how I normally do use LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.dart/home semicolon opt-out equals false semicolon lang equals end semicolon.
They showed the code right there. At least the screen reader showed the code, so it's going to echo every bit of that.
Frame.
Oh, so they're using a frame that's not done correctly.
Sponsored links frame.
And now they're putting the sponsored links on top.
Link instructional design MS-reach learners through the power of media. Learn how with this MS degree.
So I know I've gotten to a advertisement here, but I don't know exactly how complex this is. I can either go down arrow.
Sponsored link, LinkedIn.frame end.
It set the frame end, but we'll see if it did stop or not.
List end.
No, it said there's a list end.
Link graphic Vincent Martin link.
And now it says I'm at my name and I'm now logged in. If I didn't already know this page, I would still be browsing around trying to figure out what's going on. So this is a very good example of not using a good, proper methodology for using user-centered design. You're not following a good method of understanding or flow. It opened up a new browser window, which is a good way, but
I heard Applebee's had a big juicy steak and it's under 550 calories menu.
We're getting a advertisement that it didn't tell me I was going to get, and I'm going to have to listen to that because I cannot stop it because I'm getting a multi-channel here.
Link 5.
So now the
Add flavorful like garlic, dash of oregano, a pinch of rosemary.
Sounds like a great
So we're
sandwich.
getting more
Sandwich.
commercial.
Just
We'll
the
see how long this goes.
The ads for the world's biggest sandwich
Here we go.
chain, featuring fresh baked bread and crisp veggies. But now Subway has come out with a big announcement, which is shocking some customers. The company announced it will no longer use a chemical known as azotia carboniamide in its bread. Let's all say that together. Huh? According to Vani Hari, the food critic behind foodbabe.com, this chemical serves as a dough conditioner. It's also used to increase elasticity in products like yoga
Control
mats.
W.
I have no idea if I could slow that down, if I could stop it, if I could parse it in any way, because as most sites are that use some form of video or audio, the blind person gets a multi-channel. We don't know if we can mute it or not because it doesn't give us an option of reviewing the page. And the only way for me to review the page to find out what's going on is to use the screen reader and listen at the same time they're talking. So you're trying to listen to a computer and instructions on the screen plus a person talking.
Using a screen reader with Facebook.
Title is Welcome to Facebook-Login. Sign up or alert. Enter. Login button unavailable. Notification requires response. Alt. Tab. Yes button. To activate, press space bar. Up. Shift tab. No split space. Search region. Virtual PC. Search region. Search for virtual. Edit expanded has pop-up.
Okay, it is now open and it immediately started with an expanded pop-up window.
Edit expanded. Link people I may know level 0.
Okay, it says we're at level 0. I know what that means. It says people I know, but where am I on this page? I'll go back to the top to see where I'm located.
Left parent for right parent Facebook. Left banner.
There's a banner and the banner says nothing.
Heading level 1 link graphic Facebook.
And it says the heading level 1, it has Facebook written there.
Navigation region.
Navigation region.
1 messages button menu.
If I choose this, it'll in theory take me to my messages.
3 notifications button menu.
3 is notifications. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but 3 usually comes after 1, but in the middle of 3 and 1 is normally something called a 2.
1 messages button menu.
So I don't know if there's a 2 there or not.
3 note link home.
Home.
Alt +1.
Alt +1 to go home.
Link Vincent Alt +2.
Hey, Vincent, Alt +2 will take you there. So far, if I did not know what these already mean, and it's come from a lot of work and time and effort that I spent on Facebook, I would have no idea what's going on.
Privacy shortcuts button menu.
Privacy shortcuts, and I'm just at the top of the page. I don't even know how many links there are. Let's see how many links there
A
are.
note script call to colon. There is currently an open escape. Links list dialog. Links list view. Vincent Alt +2. 3 of 134.
So
To move to items.
there's 134 links on this page.
Escape.
So it sort of lets me sort of know how many links there are, but that doesn't basically tell me how long it is. What I'm kind of going to try to do is use a
Line.
command that should work and see if they've set it up so I can go through it by headings.
Favorites heading level 4.
Okay, it shot me to favorites.
APPS heading level 4 link.
APPS, whatever the heck that is, that should not be a heading.
Groups heading level 4 link.
Okay, so headings and groups should be in the right spot, but the other one wasn't.
Friends heading level 4 link.
Friends is correct.
Pages heading level 4.
Pages, that's correct.
Interests heading level 4 link.
Interest.
Trending heading level 6. Sponsored heading level 6 link.
We have headings, some of them are organized correctly, some aren't, but overall I'm going to have to still go back to the top
Left parent.
and go through those and see if I can discern what's going on.
Facebook heading level. Favorites heading level 4. Apps navigation region. Link edit profile. Link Vincent F. Martin.
I went back up to see what was above there. That makes very little sense, but I know what it means.
Link edit profile.
I can edit my profile.
Apps navigation region.
It said apps navigation region, so in theory this should mean that we have applications coming up.
Heading level 4 favorites.
Favorites.
List of 5 items. Link newsfeed. Link to. Messages. Link events. Link photo. Link browse. List and. Blank. Heading level 4 link APPS. List of 7 items.
And this is where the apps are. So the 4 prior links and the 4 prior headings I just encountered, none of them are the apps that it said was coming. And this is the kind of thing that would absolutely drive you crazy if you're blind. Unless someone knows how to navigate the screen ahead, since this makes very little sense, you will easily become frustrated and just say, I'm going to do something else.
That we're seeing that individuals with disabilities want to get access to these devices, but it's actually these platforms, but it's very difficult to do that. And we talk a lot about web accessibility and platform accessibility, but ICT accessibility is so much broader than that. If you think about just, I mean, most state agencies have ethics training every year, ethical training that you take. It's usually done on a platform, and that platform has to be accessible. You've got to be able to navigate it. You've got to make sure that that content is placed exactly in the right way, in the accessible format in those platforms. You got to make sure that if there's a quiz or test in that and there usually is, that it is accessible, as well as the videos need to be captioned. So you can see that it's a broad sweep. In addition, procurement. One of the things that we found with some of the findings with our feasibility study is procurement's a big, big area. How many of you we have procurement in the room? Any procurement folks? Raise your hands. Say no one's hands up. I want to get it. No, just kidding. One of the things that we're finding is that procurement is a big issue. When you're purchasing any software application, you want to make sure that language is in that contract that ensures that you're going to get the best application, the most accessible application you can. Now the problem becomes, and the challenges become, a lot of times you could have 4 or 5 different applications that you've sent an RFP on, and not any one of them is 100% accessible. So what do you do? And this happens a lot. You want to make sure that you're getting the best application, right? And you want to make sure that if you're choosing a vendor to buy an application from, you make sure that vendor at least has language in their policies and procedures of how they're actually going to deal with the accessible issues in the future. A timeline. You need to have a timeline. You need to make sure they have a policy, accessibility policy on their website. These are things to think about. So those are all kinds of things. You also, one of the things that we find with a lot of the state agencies, when you have up on your website, on your, you may have a form that actually, if you want to get a job, it goes to HR, you fill it out, and that form goes to HR, they're able to either apply for a job or not, and you may make sure that those type of forms are accessible. A lot of times we find that they're not. So it's broad sweeping when you talk about ICT accessibility. And the key is making sure that you're not only just dealing with your customers, but you're also making sure that your environment is accessible to your employees also. So it's a package deal. And a lot of times we don't think that. We think we focus on just the customers, but the employees, it's crucial. And that's why we have a partnership with the ADA office and AMAC and DTA to help provide some solutions from a centralized way. And one of the reasons why we're actually looking at this is that there has been a lot of work done already from the university standpoint, as I mentioned at the very beginning. We have got universities across the country that have been hit with serious OCR complaints. So it's something that the University System of Georgia has taken very seriously, the process. And you look about expertise, and why one of the reasons why AMAC's involved is because of our expertise in this area. It's not just us in a sense. Georgia Tech in general has done a lot of work on this. Back in 2007, they got a very large grant and have developed a tool that is a little outdated, but it's pretty phenomenal. And this tool is called the Accessibility Assistant. And as you note here, you can see it actually drills down to accessibility information, projects, and actual roles. So let's just look here. Some of the things that they've got is digital media functions, copiers, kiosks, laptop computers, sales machines, and so on. So if we drill down, just look at kiosks, you can see they list a slew of information of what a kiosk is. They also give you information about what areas of accessibility issues that a kiosk needs to deal with. So if we drill down a little further, and just let's choose blindness, It will highlight areas like labeling, display, touchscreen, interfaces, and so on. So again, there's a lot of information that's already out there that we're not trying to recreate. We're trying to pull it into a centralized area being Access GA. Does that make sense to everyone? So that's the key. Because what we're finding is that state agencies are trying to do all this work on their own. There's no success stories. Oh, there's no kind of learning and networking with each other. And this is a great option to do this at this GOVTalk right now. And so the goal with Access GA is to have a centralized place that we can do that. We can show success stories. We can show where some challenges are faced and get that out to the network. And when we started it back in 2013, July 2013, the idea was just to get that feedback from those 7 pilot institutions and just kind of find out, what was some of the challenges that they're facing, and eventually open it up to additional state agencies. And I'll talk more about that in just a second. So you've got serious OCR complaints that are hitting universities and colleges. You've got a national track record for accessibility. Universities are doing. The University of Washington is a leader in this area. They've done a lot of work in this area, specifically in education. So I've got a URL hyperlink in here that I can show you later if needed. So you've got this slew of expertise happening throughout the country regarding ICT accessibility, and it's starting to really bubble up in Georgia. So who is AMAC and why are we involved in this? AMAC's been around since 2007. It was an initiative from the University System of Georgia, and this initiative was really around converting textbooks into accessible format. Okay, and you're going to see a little bit of this from Microsoft later on with Nora, but it's basically taking a textbook, cutting it, scanning it, and converting it into different types of media flavors. And this could be accessible PDF. It could be a Word doc. It could be specialized flavors like Daisy and so on. So that was the premise of AMAC. University System of Georgia, 31 institutions, 9,000 students. Okay, 9,000 students. You add the technical school, another 10,000. You add the university, the private schools. You've got between 35 to 40,000 people with disabilities in our higher education. And a lot of them have print-related disabilities. In Access GA, and really with the AMAC, one of the things when you talk about print-related disability, it can be someone who's blind, visually impaired. That can be someone with a cognitive disability, someone with dyslexia or acquired brain injury. So there's a variety. It could be someone with severe ADHD. It could be considered to be print-related disability. It could be someone with a physical impairment, and they have trouble turning a page of a book. So the premise of AMAC was just that. And what was happening was there was serious ongoing and yearly, year after year, legislation coming down from different disability advocacy groups. And these advocacy groups were saying that we've got to make sure if we're going to buy any textbook, it needs to be accessible. And that's a big issue. You know what I mean? So the university system was proactive. Instead of getting hit with OCR complaints, instead of having to mandate that faculty put books on the syllabus that are only accessible. You know what I mean? Which is, you can just imagine faculty with academic freedom, how that would have gone over, right? So instead of doing that, they developed this center called AMAC. And it was a centralized way of actually converting textbooks into alternative media, offer training and technology systems. This was kind of a hub site. So Kennesaw University, Georgia Tech, Georgia State weren't converting the same book. There would be a centralized repository. There would be guidelines and standards that could follow. There would be adaptive technology that would actually be provided to the students so they were able to read the content. So that became AMAC. So there's a lot of touch points. Those touch points you saw a few minutes ago that deal with ICT accessibility are threaded a lot through AMAC services. So we convert textbooks, so we know content. Do our websites better be accessible because our students with disabilities are hitting it. So there's a lot of different areas. So some of the things that we do is we do Braille. Now, how many of you can tell me what one Braille book costs? Let's say math, the Braille book. Anybody? Just throw a number out.
About $5,000.
About $5,000. Throw a number up. Another number up. One math book. 10,000, go up. tried $30,000 to $50,000. We better have a centralized repository, because we'll go broke without it. A student who's deaf, taking one class, has an interpreter. Let's put this student down at Macon, okay? The interpreter travels down to Macon, comes back. How much does it cost for that one student for that one class to accommodate? $75,000. GSU alone spends for 9 students $500,000. It's very expensive. So we tried to centralize that by doing remote captioning and other products so we can link into the classroom and actually listen to the faculty member and then do real-time typing right there, feed the student transcripts. It doesn't replace the need of an interpreter, but it's something that we can do by not pulling that student out of their environment and their support group that work down in South Georgia, let's just say. So the idea of AMAC is to centralize it, and that's what Access GA is all about, is to save money. Because of some of the things that we've done, our reuse rate for our textbooks is at 45%. 40% reuse. So a student can put an order in, they can get that book back within 24 hours, and we save the system money. Because we're not converting these books, which cost about $299 to do prior to AMAC. Well, now we're down to about $85 to $90 each conversion. So again, it is all about business. This is about business, and it's also about supporting our individuals throughout the state with disabilities. And it's a creative model that we hope will translate to Access GA. And that's how we're setting this up. So let's talk briefly. Again, I'm hitting the university system hard because we know what's going on and we've got kind of behind the scenes look. But this is an OCR complaint that was filed in 2010 with Penn. Now, it was from the National Federation for the Blind. That was the advocacy group that actually came after Penn State, and they came after them hard. And it was more of a resolution that came out of it. But it put Penn State in a wonderful place because now they're leaders in the field of accessibility throughout their campuses. Their kiosks are now more accessible, not fully accessible. Their websites, the learning management systems that they choose are more accessible. So you're seeing a slew of work being done in this. The issue is that they have to spend now a ton of money to make this happen instead of doing it from the front end. What came out of it was that they would have to be audited on a regular basis. They would have to hire individuals that deals with accessibility on their campuses, and we're talking experts in the field of accessibility. So, and they're all continually being audited, but this is a wonderful site that you'll get, wonderful site to look at because it covers a large university that has several feeder campuses, I think about 23 feeder campuses across the state, that is addressing ICT accessibility on a global level within their university. You can see the different types of things, of different events that they've got coming up. They've got the syllabus statements. So faculty and staff are being pushed to this. So it's pretty exciting that we're starting to see models out there, and there's not a lot of models out there dealing with this. One of the other areas within a university setting is the CSU, the California University System. They've done a lot of things within accessibility, making sure that their campuses, and there's 23 of them, are accessible. California community colleges also have done a lot. There's special state laws dealing with ICT accessibility. There are 121 California community colleges, 419,000 students in that. So you can imagine the percentage of people with disabilities, with print-related disabilities, in addition, people with learning disabilities and other ones that are going through there. Another was in 2010 with the National Federation for the Blind, again, strong advocacy group, hit Arizona State up. And this was for the Kindle. This became a big issue. The Kindle was not fully accessible. Actually, it was accessible, from my understanding, fully accessible. They didn't have features turned on. So the content on the Kindle could be read, but the navigation wasn't accessible. So if I'm blind and I'm navigating through the Kindle, up, down, left, right, finding the book that I want to use, navigation wasn't accessible. Crazy. So they got hit, and Arizona got hit because they were doing a pilot study. And every student in this class, I think it was a couple classes if I recall, had to have a Kindle. There was two blind students that were in it. And that's how the content was being delivered. So there was definitely a challenging thing for Arizona to learn, much more accessible now. But what was interesting, this particular OCR complaint prompted the Department of Justice, U.S. Dear Colleague University President letter, which means that the Department of Justice and the Department of Education sent out a letter in 2011, I think 11 or 12, sent a letter saying that you need to make sure your campuses are fully accessible. So you see this happening in the university setting. And you're seeing it more and more happening in other state environments. And we need to be proactive, find a way of being in front of some of these OCR complaints that can come down. And working together as state agencies, I think we can do that, because we can learn a lot from each other, hence Access GA. One more, clickers. Who would you think? Florida State. Clickers are, these are specific student response systems. Very popular right now in universities. Basically, the faculty person asks a question, he gets a response from the students in the classroom. Could be 300 students in the classroom. Okay? If we hit it, it tells you the answer, and basically they see the metrics right in front of them. A lot of these student response systems weren't accessible. Florida State was using one of those systems. So they got hit with about having $150,000 coming back from 2012. So again, ICT accessibility is product and devices and services. Product, devices, and services is packaged that way. So keep in mind, it's just not about websites. Not just about websites, it's so much more. So, some of the actual projects that Access G has done, again, I'm sliding more on the university side because we've worked a lot more in that area, is to do an evaluation of the learning management system. University System of Georgia was looking at 4 different types of learning management systems. Nailed it down to 2, and then they did a full evaluation on those 2. Put it in a sandbox, individuals with disabilities go in there, and they played around in the sandbox to see which one's accessible or not. We also looked very closely at their policy on how, if things weren't accessible in the learning management system, we chose Desire to Learn. When were they going to become accessible? What was the plan? And we chose Desire to Learn over Blackboard, mainly because at the time, now there's a merger, at the time when we did this, Blackboard wasn't as accessible as Desire to Learn. And Desire to Learn actually had 5 individuals on their staff that had disabilities that were testing this out regularly. That's a great question to ask. I mean, are you invested in making sure that these platforms... So that was one area that we focused on. One problem area was the learning management system statewide. And we addressed that, and it's much better. The other area that we did is the area of affordable learning solutions. And Georgia, the university system right now, is real focused on making sure that textbooks that are very expensive for these individuals, these students, are affordable, and that they're starting to look more at open educational resources. So books that are produced by faculty that are free and provided. You know. Well, if you have faculty out there producing books, you need to make sure that the content is accessible. So that was another area that we've been working with the university system to actually help make sure that it's done from the back end and not try to convert these books into accessible format after the content has been written. So next one I'm going to show you is a short video. And this video is from a gentleman named John Randall. John is an assistive technology expert, specifically in the area of vision. And he right now is going to walk you through some of the challenges he feels with web accessibility.
One of the classic challenges or barriers I see with people who are blind and low vision accessing information is the issue of inaccessible websites. There are some very, very specific guidelines on how websites can be made accessible. And there are a lot of accessible websites out there. Very powerful screen readers that can actually do a very good job of rendering a page through its headings, links. There are a lot of websites that continue to be a challenge, both for people who are blind accessing it through a screen reader and for people who are low vision. Examples are graphics that are not labeled effectively with alt tags. Some websites actually have few or no headings whatsoever, which is a key element in which people with screen readers access information on a website. For people with low vision, reduced levels of contrast. So with an aging population, with our baby boomer population, very often eye conditions like macular degeneration, the diabetes epidemic with diabetic retinopathy. It's a large market share that a lot of companies and educational institutions are not tapping into because their website is not as usable and as accessible as it could be. So there are a lot of accessibility features built into this website. So right now I'm running Windows Magnifier in order to increase the size of this for demonstration purposes. So we have the feature to increase or decrease the text size with a plus or minus, change colors and other options. One of the most important features I use on a web page, control spin wheel. And you can see how it does a really nice job of word wrap. So it actually renders the page in more of a vertical up and down format that I can read, where I don't have to pan left and right in order to see the screen. I can very quickly, with the control spin wheel, increase or decrease this viewable size of this page. I'm a strong advocate for building accessibility from the ground up. Not only are accessible websites good for people who are blind or low vision, if a web page has effectively labeled headings and effectively labeled links, search engines tend to much more accurately reflect the contents of that particular website, so that a specific company or organization or educational institution can actually get more hits on their specific website. There are a lot of advantages to that.
So that was John talking a little bit about just web accessibility and some of the assistive technology that can actually help using, and some of the navigation tools that you need to actually use in order to make websites more accessible. When you're looking at, I'm looking at my time, I apologize, I'm rushing. Accessible electronic course materials, some of the issues and challenges just around that, just to give you an idea, is there's very little bit of marketplace accessibility out there. So publishers out right now do not have access to content. So buying content accessible is very difficult to actually do, as we do. So out of, let's just say, in a post-secondary setting, across the country, in the U.S., there's about 25 to 30,000 new titles that come out a year. These titles are not coming out accessible. There's more and more publishers are starting to actually do that. There's Pearson Publishing, and there's McGraw, there's Wiley. These publishers are actually more and more aware of the challenges, but trying to change the ship and move it to a different direction is very, very difficult. So that is one area regarding electronic accessibility. Copyright, understanding the copyright infringement issues is another area that's very struggling for publishers as well as the consumer. The flexibility of the digital format can these formats be flexible so that the assistive technology actually can access them, the mobile devices can access them. So that's another area. There's no Onyx feeds, what the publishers actually send to Amazon so they could populate the Amazon site, or through Onyx feeds. And these feeds, in 2010, there were 10 additional categories that were added to these feeds regarding accessibility. Is the book, is the book accessible? And there's like a series of them. And one of the things that is challenging is that a lot of these publishers are not populating those feeds right now. So we don't know if a book is accessible or not out there. The content is accessible. Another area is the lack of post-secondary publishers' expertise in this. Publishers don't know fully right now, especially the small to mid-sized one, of actually how they're going to make their books accessible, or what format they're going to put the accessibility in, the formats they're going to put the tech content in. A lot of this has to do with a lot of the platforms that they're actually choosing, and that's been challenging too, because that has changed. The post-production conversion is a low-cost technology. To produce this, there was a feasibility study that was done back in 2000 to produce a textbook, an average textbook, put it into an accessible format. It would cost the publisher $1 per page. Average textbooks are between 650 and 850 pages. So it's a very expensive proposition for them to take on. DRM is the textbooks locked down, these electronic textbooks locked down? And can you, if it's locked down, can the assistive technology, the screen reading software, actually read that? Again, these publishers, this is their content, this is what actually is their bread and butter. So they want to make sure these electronic files are accessible. At the same time, they've got to be locked down. So there's challenges around that. Lack of faculty and staff understanding, accessible course materials, and then lack of LMS integration of course, accessible course material. So just to show you that it's a challenging place to get content in accessible format, period. It's done right up front, in a much better place. So quickly, I'm going to go through just quickly some of the findings we found in the feasibility study that we did with Access GA on these 7 state agencies. The findings focused around web accessibility, accessible content, and procurement. Those are the 3 threads that really came out in the findings. All the state agencies were dealing with the same problem. We kind of knew that going into it, but it was nice to actually see that come out and make sure that we were actually right. The challenges that we face a lot of times in making Access GA work, as well as just your own state agency, making sure that ICT is, making sure all your ICT is accessible, is the design, the architectural barriers of information technology. The diversity of the state agencies has been a challenge for Access GA. They're all doing different things in different services, which means that in some cases their ICT is different. Locating expertise in a broad range of these topics. This is not easy to find experts in this area. Designing and developing ICT staff education. The bureaucracy is a big issue. Everyone has their priority, and there's lots of priorities a lot of times ahead of accessibility. But as I showed with some of the OCR complaints, even though there wasn't a lot of money attached to it, there's a lot of negative press that can come out if you get hit with an OCR complaint. Timelines and also obviously the cost. These are all things that are challenges with Access GA and working with state agencies. The resources that we provide are specifically in the areas of documentation content remediation, so training around that, which you're going to see that in a little bit with Nora. Web application evaluations, assistive technology quality assurance, procurement consultation, so helping work with your procurement groups, and policy development. So those are the services that Access GA actually provides. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we started with 7 state agencies, and we've expanded that. This is all on the wiki that you can actually find, and you have in your handouts. The team, before I close it out, the team that is leading this, obviously the ADA office. Got a GTA that's involved in this, which is great. Joy has been the acting, you'll hear from her this afternoon, been the acting manager of this. I've been involved in more of the policy areas. We got Nora, who's been doing a lot with the content accessibility, and you'll see that this afternoon. We've got our programmer, Todd Runkel, who's dealing with more of the technical issue on websites and other platforms. We've got Carolyn doing more of the assistive technology, and you'll see her next. And we've got a coordinator that's going to be hired very soon, mainly because of the great commitment that the ADA office has put towards this project. Anyway, that is my time. Did I make it? I'm good. I'm right on. Thank y'all. Y'all have been great. We're going to transition over to Carolyn. Okay.